Iowa State dominated Syracuse, but that's what you'd expect when a 2-0 team is forced into a fifth place match against an 0-2 team for absolutely no prize money.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Nick Marovets. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're going to go ahead and kick off the show with the fact that the Players Era Tournament Festival, whatever you want to call it, was not a fan of Iowa State. Just didn't think that they had enough to compete for the championship. We're going to go into that in detail. Then we're going to go ahead and take a look at the win over Syracuse. Iowa State advances to 3-0 in the actual festival. We'll break that game down. That was a huge win. And then finally, today we're going to take a look at should Iowa State return next season. This Players Festival isn't going anywhere. So should they come back? Yes or no? We'll answer that question at the end of today's show. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Let's go ahead and dive into this. There's a lot here, okay? And the first thing I think we need to kind of address is a gripe that I have with the way that this Players Era format is kind of structured. There should not be this much confusion, okay? The other night, after Iowa State defeated Creighton, there was probably a good 6 hours of confusion, of discourse, of who is Iowa State going to play? Is it going to be a St. John's rematch? Could it be Alabama? Are they going to make, the third place game? What's going to happen? The fact that there's that much confusion already red flag. Like that to me just feels like an immediate, maybe we need to figure that out. Nonetheless, like that was just one side note that I had. But what actually happened was Iowa State ended up as a 2-0 team in the fifth place game against Syracuse. Now, this is notable because there were 5 2-0 teams. Iowa State, one of them. 4 of them got to play for cash money, for a prize. Iowa State, the only team that did not. That aside, Iowa State in the fifth place game did not play a 1-1 team. They played an 0-2 team in the Players Era Tournament, in the Players Era Festival in Syracuse, and obviously dominated them. Now, obviously, Syracuse certainly played well. We'll get into some of their previous games more so in the second segment, but Iowa State blew them out of the water, as you would kind of expect the team that, in my opinion, very rightfully could have fought for third place, if not the championship. The problem is that it comes down to point differential. When you start, the first 2 games are scheduled. Iowa State knew they were going to play St. John's. They knew they were going to play Creighton. That's how it's set up. That's how it's been for weeks. We already knew this. That's why we talked about it when we faced Creighton the first time. We knew there would be a rematch. After those 2 games, everybody's first 2 games are scheduled. After those first 2 games, they take a look at the top teams. Everyone who's undefeated essentially is going to be at the top, right? It starts with 2-0 teams are going to compete in a championship, right? So then they get past the 2-0s because there's a bunch of 2-0s and they have to look towards something that quote unquote tiebreaker is point differential. Okay. So the other games, I guess I should lay this out really quickly. The championship game you saw last night was Gonzaga versus Michigan. And the third place game was Tennessee versus Kansas. The reason that those were the matchups was because Michigan beat SDSU by 40 and Auburn by 30. And then Gonzaga beat Bama by 10 and Maryland by 39, right? So massive point differentials for the 2 in the championship. In the third place game, Kansas beat Notre Dame by 10 and Syracuse by 11. And then Tennessee beat Rutgers by 25 and Houston by 3. So it comes down to net point differential. Iowa State won the game against St. John's by 1 and the game against Creighton by 18. So their net point differential was 19 points. Just not enough to put them in the top 5 of the tournament. There's a major problem with this format, though. Iowa State, they're not playing teams like Rutgers. They're not playing teams like Maryland. Rutgers is actually better than Maryland in this case because Gonzaga just made Maryland look like a JV team. It's just not comparable. I've seen a lot of discourse about the concept of if you want to do point differential, which we'll get into in a second, maybe do it against the spread, because then at least it's accommodating for your opponent. It's like weight adjusted. Iowa State, on the bright side, did pick up some really great wins. I think the win over St. John's was massive. The win over Creighton, if not necessarily in the eyes of a committee or whatever, it's a big win for the team who had just lost to that Creighton team a few weeks ago. And then the win over Syracuse, we will get to in the second segment. I feel like that was a massive win. And Iowa State, in my eyes, came out of this a winner. But the fact that they were basically punished for playing that good competition, the fact that they got these good wins forced them out of the championship, forced them out of the third place matchup. Now, why am I so fired up about Iowa State not being in the third place matchup, Iowa State not being in the championship game? Well, it's because the amount of money that is associated with those games. Every team that makes a Players Era tournament or makes a Players Era festival makes $1 million. We've talked about this. We'll revisit it today. But if you're playing in the first place game, you're playing for an extra $1 million. Loser goes home with $500K. Third place game, winner brings home $300,000, while fourth place brings home $200,000. That's a huge chunk of change. Now, the way that it works is, it's like they open up $200,000 worth of events that the players will attend, and then that is how it's donated. That's how it's moved. But nonetheless, so we're just kind of looking at like how much money is going to end up in the pockets of the university. $200,000 at least, at the very minimum, $1,000 is what Iowa State could have had, essentially, if they had a slightly better point differential. Kansas had a point differential of, by my math right now, 21 points, and Iowa State's was 18. So just to clarify here, the difference in $200,000 was a buzzer beater by St. John's, and the fact that TJ Otzelberger didn't feel like embarrassing his opponent in the last 3 minutes against Creighton. That was literally the difference in $200,000. Iowa State could have, gone with those last 2 points and beat Creighton by 20. Now, obviously, that alone wouldn't have been enough, and I'm sure that there was an element of that in TJ Otzelberger's decision that he knew, obviously, because of the buzzer beater against St. John's. But that's how close Iowa State was to making a minimum of $200,000. Obviously, could have bumped up to $3. That to me. Like, and then you consider the caliber of opponent that they're playing. I don't see how this is fair. And does it need to be fair? Yada, yada, yada. In my opinion, yes. Yes. When there is this much money on the line and teams like Iowa State that are going to struggle financially for a long time are in this tournament, it needs to be run better. And Seth Berger says that the format is here to stay. He's a guy who's kind of in charge, came up with this whole thing. He's like, yeah, it's like AAU. We're going to stick with it. Look, man, maybe we need to adjust for who our opponent is, or so, like there's got to be something here. Play more games. I don't like it's a complete round robin. There's pods. I don't know how you want to do it, but it can't be like this, because I started talking, this segment talking about how confusing it was. It wasn't even super clear. I think I saw 85 different posts of who Iowa State will play. I'm like, I didn't even know Michigan State was in this thing. Obviously a joke, but you understand my riff. Like, everyone was lost. That's problem A. Problem B, now you get to what actually ended up happening. Iowa State, 2-0, beat a top 15 team. Like, maybe I think probably a top 10 team in the country. 2-0 in the tournament. Just didn't beat their opponents by enough to make $200,000. To me, it just doesn't. I just don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. The Players Era got away with one here, and we'll revisit this in the third segment. But we have to first talk about at least the positives. Iowa State dominated Syracuse. I mean, dominated, and obviously more so in the second half. We're going to get into that huge breakdown, this huge win for Iowa State coming up right here after this. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even when you miss the start of the game Or if you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Enjoy your time watching Iowa State basketball as it is while you can. Things are about to change drastically. And the reason I bring that up is because in Iowa State's dominant win over Syracuse, I think we learned that Killian Torre, he's an NBA guy, right? This guy is unbelievable. As a freshman, 7 games into the season, we are learning obviously about this team as a whole, but Killian Torre is the real deal. I cannot hardly believe what I am seeing with my eyes. Before we dive into individual players, I had to say that, but before we dive into individual players, let's take a look at the game as a whole. Iowa State wins at 95-64, a 31-point victory. And just to go back to the first segment, is that a big enough point differential for you? Is that a big enough margin of victory? Imagine if you play Syracuse instead of St. John's, right? Like, that's my problem with this whole thing. Nonetheless, huge win for Iowa State, but the name of this game was that at halftime, Iowa State was only up by 1. 34-35 was your halftime score. But then if you do the math, 34-35, second half goes underway. Iowa State wins at 95-64. That's right. Iowa State won the second half 30-60. 60. Iowa State dominated the second half. At one point, I don't have the number right in front of me. I believe they were 18-21 from the field. It was ridiculous. Everything was falling. Everything was clicking offensively. Iowa State had a super fun second half. The first half, honestly, to me, felt a little bit like a walkthrough, like a sleepwalking type of situation. There is a lot that goes into that. We didn't even talk about this in the first segment, but the fact that Iowa State played at 10 a.m. local after probably finding out who their opponent was at about 1 a.m., that played a factor, I think. I assume, maybe wrongfully so, that there was an element of like, well, we're definitely one of the best 4 teams in this tournament, and you disrespect us by making us play Syracuse, an 0-2 team in this tournament. What are we doing here? Like, what's the play? I could be wrong on that, but I definitely felt like there was an element of like, man, we got to be here. What are we doing? And then it turned into, I don't know what was said at halftime. Whatever it was, I'm a fan of it because in the second half, Iowa State was up by 26 points, and you see TJ Otzelberger over there on his knees screaming rebound. There was an element of intensity in the second half it was incredible, to be completely honest. Your leading scorer for this game was none other than Milan Momcilovic, 24 points. And we're going to bring this up right away. First career in-game dunk for Milan Momcilovic. Round of applause for the man. That was super cool to see, actually. And the way that the bench reacted and him smiling going up the floor, tons of fun. I think it speaks to the way that this team is playing right now with basically they're enjoying the game. They're having fun. And that's really I think that's actually really key to the way that this team plays. Nonetheless, other leading scorers on the day, Killian Torre, as I mentioned, had 19. Joshua Jefferson, 13. Blake Buchanan, 12. Dominic Nelson off the bench had 12 as well. Jamarian Bateman with 5 and Nate Heisey with 2. Look, the way that I saw this game play out, essentially, other than, you take a look at the 2 halves, I'm mostly focusing on the second half. One, the defense for Iowa State is no joke, and it's not going anywhere, right? Defense travels. The smothering ability of Iowa State is going to be a problem for a lot of teams this season. And what's amazing about the fact that Iowa State can just completely, like with a fire, you put those fire blankets on it, you smother it. That's Iowa State's defense to basically any offense that's trying to get hot. Just throw the fire blanket on and put it out. The fact that Iowa State can do that, they also don't only score like 70 points a game. They don't need to hold you to 60 to win. They're just and then they're gonna go score 95. I cannot believe how that second half went for Iowa State. But as soon as they were actually hitting the shots they were taking, like Syracuse wasn't really getting anything going, and Iowa State just took off. Take a look at the flow chart for the game. It's like tight. I guess it'd be this way for you guys. Tight, and then like 3 minutes into the second half, it goes, and Iowa State's like off the screen. It was unbelievable. And that's what's so special about the difference between like the way they're playing defense at an incredible rate, but the way they're able to score as well. My biggest takeaway, other than the defense, Jefferson's going to be maybe an All-American this season. Unbelievable, obviously getting 13 points, but he also had 10 assists. He had 3 steals. He had 6 rebounds. I mean, the kid balled out. It was obviously homecoming. That was a huge deal. That was really cool, actually. But yeah, Joshua Jefferson, going to be a major problem this year. The way that he conducted himself on the court, honestly, to me, felt like he was a coach on the floor. In some ways, not obviously every way, it felt like he had a bunch of guys around him, and he was the facilitator. He was like, all right, we're gonna go here. We're gonna run this. He didn't bring the ball up the floor every time. That's not what I'm saying. Just had some sort of a presence about him on the floor that was really, really cool. And I think you need that. That's what we talked about with those returners, obviously to this system, but to Iowa State. Like that was huge, I feel like, for Iowa State in this game. Kept everyone level-headed, kept the main thing. Joshua Jefferson was that guy. Milan Momcilovic, next takeaway, could be the answer for scoring at Iowa State. Obviously, we see Killian Torre with 19. Joshua Jefferson's always going to chip in his. We'll get to Blake Buchanan in a second. But when Milan gets hot, he gets hot. He can absolutely light you up. He went 6 of 10 from 3. Didn't start on fire, but basically made his own. It was made his own fire. It was awesome the way that Milan Momcilovic really came into his own in the second half. Now, once that momentum got going, that could definitely be a part of it. Felt like Iowa State just literally could not miss in the second half. And at the same time, though, there is a very real world where Iowa State doesn't get it going and they don't blow this game wide open. It ends up being a 64-67 final. You know, like it's kind of just stayed that really tough matchup. Honestly, both teams weren't shooting it well in the first half the entire course of the game. So we're going to give credit where credit is due. Then we get to Killian Torre. Like I said, unbelievable freshman talent. He moves with a confidence out there that it just looks like a senior. He is, on top of the confidence, extremely aggressive on defense. He's stuck to you like peanut butter on bread. I mean, or the roof of your mouth even. Like the way he is super energetic. He's got all the enthusiasm on the defensive end of the floor. Is perfect for a TJ Otzelberger system, right? That is exactly what we're looking for. So that was a phenomenal pickup by Iowa State. We'll see how long it pans out. He could be playing 83 games next season at this rate. So we're going to enjoy it while we can. This season could be very, very special with him out there. And then Blake Buchanan, obviously another new addition for Iowa State. Phenomenal work on the inside. Phenomenal work. Had 5 rebounds today, 3 steals. It just feels like he understands the game. I already talked about him. It feels like he's bought into what Iowa State is. He's the perfect fit on the inside there. I believe it was this game. I can't remember if it was this game or Creighton. We were running a set that was, who was it? Buchanan, Jefferson, Momcilovic, maybe Plata, and then like Heisey. It was a crazy, like big package. And they play so well together. There's something about the way that this team communicates. There was a mic'd up segment in the first game against St. John's. That was when Tamin Lipsey was on the floor. And that's the other portion of this. We haven't even gotten to the fact that Tamin Lipsey didn't play in the last 2 games. Tamin Lipsey was not a part of this dominating performance from Iowa State. You completely factor in the fact that, yeah, Iowa State won 95-64, but they could have done so much better with Tamin Lipsey out there. Maybe they hold Syracuse to less, more steals. Maybe it turns into a 50-100 game. Then you're looking at Iowa State as absolutely a Final Four caliber team. And obviously we have to have people stay healthy for that to happen. But I mean, just the way that things are looking right now, yeah, I think Iowa State deserves to be in the Players Era Championship. And I think Iowa State could be a Final Four team. They look unbelievable right now. So super happy with the way that the Players Era turned out. But obviously the fact that they were snubbed from the championship game, from even the 3rd place game, hurts. Should they come back next season if they're granted the opportunity? We'll talk about that coming up right here after this. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. The variety that they offer is honestly underrated. Steaks, burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. It's one of those gifts that truly fits absolutely anyone. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. The big question on everyone's mind right now is, should Iowa State come back to the Players Era Tournament after how they were treated? The fact that they didn't get to even play in the third place game, obviously the championship game, is a whole different conversation. The fact that Iowa State started 2-0 and didn't get to compete for any actual money, should they come back? The answer, it's a resounding yes from me. The way that I see this play out is this is at bare minimum $1 million that Iowa State gets to bring home every single year. Now, the big thing is, how does Iowa State get back into this? I think Iowa State can accomplish this. The Big 12 and the Players Era Festival have reached an agreement where the top 8 teams are going to get to come back to the Players Era Festival the next season. So I assume Iowa State will be in the top 8. I think they're very, very capable of that. Obviously, this season, it to me feels like it's a given. But over the course of the next few years, even, I think Otzelberger has built this program into a top 8 in the Big 12 program for sure. It just feels like that's the kind of program that we are right now. So year over year, $1 million for Iowa State to bring back to the university is, it's unbelievable. It's hard to overstate just how big that would be for Iowa State athletics, especially when you consider, and I know we talk about this all the time, but it's worth reminding you, the fact that the state of Iowa does not allow Iowa States to pay the athletic department at Iowa State, right? Remember, we've had this conversation where you have to separate the university from the athletic department, and the Board of Regents in the state of Iowa has said that the University of Iowa State cannot pay Iowa State University athletics, right? They're different. They're entirely separate entities. Meanwhile, programs like Arizona State, according to Jamie Pollard, are pouring $50 million into their athletic programs. So they're not really too worried about the $20.5 million where it sits right now dollar mark. Like, it's just not too concerning. It doesn't really change what's going on. And Iowa State is not in that boat. They are very much troubled by that number. So bringing home an extra million is going to help. That's like a 20th of the way to the actual cap. That's a huge deal. What is that, 5%? And then if they win the thing, they bring home an extra, that's like 10%, $2 million out of the 20 and a half. That's a huge deal. I absolutely think that is, like, based on, it doesn't even matter if you don't, like, it's not a big deal to me. Like, I think if you bring home that extra million, that right there in and of itself is worth it. But I also think Iowa State is offered the opportunity to play some very aggressive competition. Now, obviously, this isn't the only tournament that's going to do that. I played in the Maui Invitational last season, like obviously Auburn, and that was a really big measuring stick game, I feel like, for Iowa State for a long time, or at least last season. But I do think that the Players Era Festival is going to become a thing. I think it's gonna evolve into this, like, they get all of basically the top 32 teams, and if you're going to any other tournament, you're going to get good competition. You're going to get a game or two where you can really say, like, this is a big quad one win for us, but it's not going to be the Players Era Tournament. And it also, like, you're not playing for money. It's just like this whole thing. I could really see the Players Era Tournament evolving into basically the S tier or the A class of these tournaments. Meanwhile, it's like, all right, if you, like, it's kind of like the NCAA tournament. I could see it turning into a thing where if you're not at, like, if you're in the NIT, like, good for you, but you're not in the big tournament, that's like, if you're not in the Players Era, good for you, but you're not playing for this NIL money. Like, I could see it becoming something like that where Iowa State would benefit greatly from being in this and getting to play great teams. Even if, this season, I still think these are all high quality wins, but like Syracuse and Creighton might not pan out to be everything that we've hoped for, as opposed to like, you got to play Michigan, or you got to play Oregon, or you get to play, like, looking at the games, yesterday and today, Iowa State, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Houston, Kansas, Tennessee, St. John's, Auburn, and there's still 5 games left. Like, you've got Gonzaga, Michigan. I don't think they're going to be playing in the same conference. So like Baylor, Houston, Kansas, probably shouldn't even mention them. But teams like Bama, Oregon, Creighton, I don't know if I put UNLV and Rutgers, maybe UNLV into that conversation, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, there is still very high quality competition at this tournament this year, and it's going to be expanded, and we're going to have the top 8 teams from the Big 12. Like, the Big 12 is the best basketball conference. It's only going to bring in other great schools. It's going to become a very tough competition. So, yeah, Iowa State was absolutely bamboozled this year. Like, I think they're one of the best 5 teams potentially in the country. Of course, they're one of the best 4 teams at the Players Era Festival. Of course they are. And they didn't get a chance to play in those games. They were forced to beat Syracuse by 31 points in a 5th-place match for $0. Yeah, they got bamboozled, all right? They got a little bit. But that doesn't mean that next season it's a bad idea. You're going to come across people who think that we shouldn't go back because it's just not fair the way that, and they don't run it well and this, that, and the other thing. $1 million is $1 million. For Iowa State, that's a big deal. Like, I know we talk about this like 20.5 and how much of these guys are getting paid, but like, where else does that $1 million come from? That's literally just a free $1 million. Absolutely, that's a good idea. Absolutely. If you don't agree with the way the competitions, kind of run, the way the festival or the tournament or whatever it is structured, that's one thing. But think about like the fact that Iowa State's in the Big 12. The fact that Iowa State is able to compete with other Power 4 conference schools, that's like $1 million goes a long way. Absolutely, it goes a long way. That feels like a no-brainer to me. And obviously, a chance for redemption next year. You also can't hate the system I do agree that it's flawed, but like, those were the rules. That's how it was set up. Point differential. You knew that going in. I'm assuming that's part of the reason that Otzelberger didn't go for the plus 20 on Creighton. We knew that those were the rules. Knowing those are the rules, like, you kind of know how you're going to go into every game moving forward. Now, if you get a tough draw, you get a tough draw, and that's what I talked about in the first segment. But I absolutely think it's worth it to go back. Just honestly for the money and where Iowa State is at from that perspective. That being said, that's going to do it for today. Happy Thanksgiving. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove once and for all that it is in fact a Cyclone state. I appreciate every single one of you. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.